I'm Peter Hearty with Hearty Law. In this video, I'll be discussing the basics of spousal support in Ontario. What is spousal support? Well, it's a financial payment from one spouse to the other post-separation or divorce. In this video, I'll be discussing entitlement to spousal support, amount of spousal support, and duration of spousal support. For the most part, there are three basic ways you can be entitled to spousal support: compensatory, or compensation, non-compensatory, or contract. I'm not going to discuss contract here, because if there is a contract that entitles you to spousal support, you don't need to worry about entitlement. So what is compensatory spousal support, or compensation? It means compensation for the economic disadvantages that one spouse experienced as a result of the marriage, or as a result of the breakdown of the marriage or relationship. Let's look at an extreme example. Husband and wife meet in high school. They're together for several years. The wife doesn't work, and they decide to have a family. They have 5 children over the course of several years. The marriage lasts 25 years, and at the end of the marriage, the wife never worked, but had an important role looking after the family and raising the children. She doesn't have any work experience to go out to get a job so that she can support herself post-separation. On the flip side, the husband benefited tremendously from the marriage. He was able to travel for work and further his career, and, for example, he leaves the marriage making $200,000 a year. Well, if there is no support going from one side to the other, it simply isn't fair. You have one spouse making $200,000 a year, and one spouse making nothing, with no job history, no background, no experience, and potentially reaching near 50 years old. This simply is not fair. So spousal support addresses that. So compensatory spousal support addresses this very specific issue. The wife, in this instance, suffered a significant economic drawback or disadvantage because of the marriage. Non-compensatory means needs-based. What do you need right now? Potentially, you have work experience, job experience. That's not an issue, but there's a significant disparity between the incomes. $100,000, let's say. Well, needs-based, you're looking at what do you actually need to survive. There's some talk and some concepts in relation to maintaining the same standard of living that may or may not be applicable in your situation. But non-compensatory spousal support addresses what you actually need to survive. If it's determined that you're entitled to spousal support, the next question is, for how long? Duration. For the most part, any marriage exceeding 20 years, the duration is going to be indefinite. That doesn't mean forever. It just means we need more information before the final assessment or before it can be decided when spousal support will end. If the marriage wasn't quite 20 years, there's also something called the 65 factor. So the age of the spouse seeking spousal support plus the duration of the marriage. So let's say, for example, a spouse who's 55 years old at separation, but the marriage was only 10 years. Well, then you've reached the 65 factor. This calculation recognizes the fact that those that may be older may have a harder time entering into the workforce or going back into the workforce. So if you're at a marriage less than 20 years and the age in marriage or age in relationship does not equal 65, then potentially we're looking at a limited duration spousal support. Anywhere between 1 year for every 2 years of marriage, all the way up to 2 years of support for every year of marriage. There isn't any simple answer, and likely because this is likely one of the most complicated and contentious issues in a separation, a lot of negotiation and understanding from both sides is needed. Concessions from both sides will help resolve this dispute. So how long are you entitled to spousal support? It depends. It depends on the length of the marriage, it depends on needs, depends on your medical situation right now, and it depends on what's needed going forward. So if you're entitled to spousal support, and you've decided what the duration ought to be, the next question is, what's the quantum? How much per month are you going to get for spousal support? Again, there's no easy answer. The federal government has released spousal support advisory guidelines, but those are just what they say, guidelines. They're not the law, but it provides a range. And you'll see a range of potential spousal support. So you'll have a low, a high, and a mid-range. It doesn't mean you're entitled to the high or low or mid-range. It means you need to decide what factors are appropriate, what needs to be assessed to decide where on the scale that you fall. So somebody who's a stay-at-home parent looking after the children, suffering significant disadvantages economically throughout the marriage or as a result of the marriage, likely is going to be on the high side of the scale. Somebody who may be making slightly less than their ex-spouse, no children in the marriage, no other factors to consider, may be on the low range. And others may fall somewhere in between. So there's no simple and set formula. Child support is very easy for the most part. If the paying parent makes this much money, you look on the table, this is what you pay for child support. There is no similar table for spousal support. There's a lot of analysis and a lot of way to examine this and assess this. There's other ways to address potential economic disadvantages through divorce or separation, and it can be by way of other financial assessments or financial concessions. So potentially one spouse doesn't want to make spousal support payments over a longer period of time. They could give up potentially an interest in the matrimonial home if there's significant equity there, or give up significant interest in a pension or other retirement mechanisms or assets that may exist. So there's ways to assess and evaluate the economic disadvantages, and there's ways to address them and compensate those that require compensation. End of the day, spousal support becomes and is one of the most contentious issues in a separation or divorce. It's a very complicated and complex area of law. There's a lot of situations and there's a lot of factors that need to be considered. If you've got any questions about spousal support, your entitlement, for the length of time that you're entitled, or for the quantum of spousal support, please contact Hearty Law today.